She's Katie Montgomery. He's Justin Joseph. These best friends are serving subpoenas to bad advice weekly with Wrong Way Forward. Now, here's Katie and Justin.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wrong Way Forward, a podcast where we roast the worst advice. My name is Katie Montgomery, and I'm here with my college best friend, Justin Joseph. Justin, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's spring. The spring has sprung in Denver, as they say. I'm opening the pool early. And so, 80 degrees yesterday. Plants are blooming. I'm looking at my grass and thinking, what am I going to do this year? So, yeah, great. What about you in DC?
Wait a second. You had 80 degrees yesterday in Denver?
80 degrees yesterday in Denver. We have, I think, 83 or 84 today. So things are...
Oh, my gosh. I'm in DC, and it was about 35 degrees yesterday. It was freezing.
You are kidding me. Yeah, we've only snowed 3 times this winter, which is not great. But, because the ski industry is impacted. Yeah. I tried skiing once, and it was terrible. But anyway, it's been lovely because we basically had a long summer, early spring.
Oh my gosh. Well, we are dying for that to happen here. We are ready for it on the East Coast. And with that being said, I am going to dive into this week's Wrong Way Forward. This is an actual advice column from the New York Times. And what I think is interesting here is this is part of their group called Social Cues, which kind of asks about kind of edited questions. And the headline is, "My boss didn't care that my mom was dying. Help." So it says, "I have taught at the same community college for over 30 years. In October, my mother became seriously ill and died the next month. During her illness, my new boss asked to meet with her about year-end paperwork, and I declined the meeting. She requested at the last minute, and my mother was being evaluated for hospice care that day. The next day, my boss sent me an email about 3 other meetings I had declined. I responded that I was stepping away from meetings during my mother's illness, but my boss doubled down. She told me she held everyone to the same standards to ensure that contractual obligations were being fulfilled. After my mother died, I told my boss in person how disappointed I was in her lack of empathy. She replied that all employees must meet their obligations. At this point, I can't even look at her. Are there any suggestions?" And so Philip Gaines, who kind of manages Social Cues, writes back, "I'm sorry for your loss, for the grief and anger you are feeling now, and for the stress you felt while you were juggling work and caring for your mother. You may not love my advice, but I think it's time to revise the one-sided story that you are telling yourself. It does not serve you. To be clear, your boss does not appear to be a contender for any Empath of the Year award. But at the same time, employees do not have a unilateral right to stop performing their jobs because of personal circumstances. You don't mention speaking to your boss or to anyone else, to ask for recommendations during your mother's illness, or to even reschedule meetings that you missed. You simply informed your boss that you had stepped away from meetings during this period, but that wasn't your sole prerogative. Now, it's possible that your boss may have refused your request, but we'll never know, because both of you stuck stubbornly to your own courses at the very moment you should have been talking to each other. But that's in the past. It's only been a few months since your mother died. Take care of yourself. There will be plenty of time to process your feelings about your boss and work protocols later." So, Justin, what do you think about this advice? Is this the wrong way forward?
Well, let me just say, I have only managed people once in my life. I've had careers as a lawyer, a reporter in a newsroom, and when I was getting out of reporting, my newsroom asked me to. So they're in TV, like you've heard Nexstar in the news now. Nexstar owns like 40 TV stations. So the ownership group of my TV station said, "Would you run a newsroom for us?" So they sent me to Norfolk, Virginia, where I ran a newsroom. So I have I've been managing people for exactly 1 year to the day, because I think I was good at it, but it's just, that's the kind of boss I was. If someone came to me and said my mom was dying, I'd be like, "Oh my God, what are you doing here? Get out, go away." This one is like, we all have responsibility. I mean, that's the kind of boss I think I would aspire to be, or actually I wouldn't aspire to be, but I think that's kind of, it makes me cringe, but it's probably the way you handle this. This is your wheelhouse. What do you think?
Well, I think the first thing, and I talk to a lot of leaders and managers about this, and what we are not doing in relationships and work relationships is what I call contracting. What does this look like? And the idea is the reason that we contract about how we handle certain things is that we're talking about it when there are no stakes involved. We're talking about it when we're not in fight or flight. We're talking about it in hypotheticals. And so it's easy to have the conversation because there is not, stress or tension in the room. So
That
the
seems
example,
appropriate to me.
yeah, and so the example I give all the time is when I was at my previous university, INSEAD, and I made a transition to an associate dean role. I very clearly sat down with my boss and asked things like, how do you like to communicate? How frequently? What do you like our one-on-one meetings to look like? But then I asked a question that literally served me so well. And I said, what could I do that could piss you off?
Oh,
And it
interesting.
was that question that gave me a little nugget that then over the next years, I knew that if that issue popped up, I knew that he needed to be involved and he would not be comfortable with
Do you
me
remember what
making a
it was? I'm just
decision.
curious.
Yeah, so it was, generally he handled kind of faculty matters. I handled student matters, programmatic matters, staff issues. And so it became a certain faculty, he wanted to engage in that. And it was clarity around that because that would, varied from when I had been an associate dean at Hopkins. And so it was just clear enough. And I know that the reason he gave me that, kind of piece of advice is because he had been informed by, circumstances in the past where somebody didn't handle a faculty issue very well. But it was so telling for me. So what I think is interesting is my first piece of advice would be like, why is there not an understanding here of what happens when you take time off, right? Or when you're disengaging. So I think that's a great way when you this person's been there for 30 years, but when you onboard someone or when you change leadership or when you have a new supervisor is, how are we going to work together? And one of those things is, what happens when things aren't smooth sailing? What kind of notice do I expect? What kind of, communication are we going to have? That's doing it before you have that moment of tension. So that would be my first piece of advice.
So give me relate that to this. So when this one was hired, they should have said what they should have had that conversation.
Yes, and it's a contracting conversation, and one of the kind of pieces of data that I always refer people to, and if anyone listening wants to read it, the New York Times, it was probably about 10 years ago, did an article on Google's an initiative called the Aristotle Project. And Google has data upon data upon data, and they were really trying to figure out what made some teams more effective and successful from others, because they were all being hired the same way. They were all being onboarded the same way. They were all having the same kind of review system because they wanted that consistent data. And what they found is the teams that were more successful were the ones that contracted together. These are our norms. This is how we operate. Everyone understands it. And then also talking, how do we operate in moments of tension or stress? Because that's when our strengths move from the balcony, which is where you want to be, to the basement, right? And so that's the first thing is, why was this such a surprise? And what I think is also interesting that I do think Philip Gaines did very well is two people were making assumptions and then literally digging their heels in. One was, my mother's dying. I should have full empathy and be able to do whatever I want to. The other person is, you have certain expectations. And if we were to make an excuse or to allow some, flexibility, well, the work wouldn't get done, right? And so there's clearly a disagreement about how we operate in this space.
And so, how should the manager have handled that on the front side, then on the contracting side? What would have been a better way to do that?
Well, I think the first thing is, managers, you have some managers who so much just manage to the KPI, the key performance indicator, right? Your sales goal should be this. You should attend this meeting. You should have your end of year paperwork. It's just very much cut and dry, black and white. And most of the world isn't that way. I think really good managers manage to the person, right? And those people need to be managed in different ways. How you manage me might be very different than how you manage Justin, but you want to bring them both along that growth journey and to have them kind of unleash their true passions, because that's when you're going to get high engagement work. So I think what would be first interesting is to talk to this person and say, you see someone missing meetings, right? Somebody's mentioning hospice. Rather than continuing to beat the drum of sending meeting requests, what would have been a good conversation is sitting that person down and saying, what's going on? What do you need? How can we recontract moving forward about how to work over the next month while you're dealing with this personal issue? And she could still hold the person accountable for their deliverables, but have some flexibility in how that's done. Likewise, what I do think Philip Gaines does very well is that this person who was struggling and was hurting because her mother was passing away, she just took liberties to assume that, oh, well, because I'm dealing with this, I'm no longer required to do my work. And it would have also been helpful if she kind of initiated a conversation, right? And I think her being very thoughtful about, look, I'm working with a boss who is not an empath. She probably appreciates more data-driven communication. How can I talk to her in her speak and how she operates to get what I want? And instead, people just were like, this is what I want, and I'm sticking to it.
All right. So on the other side of the break, we're going to talk more about managing to the person and how you get what you want when you're at work. And then in Block C today, we're going to talk about the Timothée Chalamet outrage over his comments on the opera and ballet and how that may have impacted him winning Best Actor this year at the Oscars. We'll be right back.
You've been listening to Wrong Way Forward, where bad advice goes to die and then gets resurrected just so we can roast it again.
If you're enjoying the chaos, hit like and subscribe and come back every Thursday for new episodes.
Have a new topic or some disastrously bad advice you want to dissect? Email wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Include your contact info.
Now back to Wrong Way Forward.
Roasting the worst advice ever. Welcome back to the Katie and Justin podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward, where we're talking about assumptions made on the job that get everyone in trouble, both from the management side and when you're on the employee side. Katie was talking about going into the break about managing to the person, and it struck a nerve with me because when I was in a newsroom, Katie, our executive producer was a very, very good friend of mine. I mean, we went out together, we drank together, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I was a really good employee. I had great sources. I worked ahead. I always had something what they called in the can, so that if we had a problem with the lead story, I could pull up something out of the hat. So it was Christmas Eve, and I had advanced my story. I had something in the can that I was going to put on that evening. So that basically meant that I didn't have to work Christmas Eve. I was at the newsroom in case there was a shooting or something, but I really was done. I had to be on air at 10, and that was it. Anyway, we even went to brunch that morning, this executive producer and I, and had, mimosa, and then we went to work, and it was great. It was Christmas Eve. It was so fun.
Super professional. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at 9:30, a flake of snow falls out of the sky. Mm-hmm. And she runs me up to the mountains an hour away to front a flake of snow falling. And I was livid.
I'm sure you were.
Yeah, because this was Christmas Eve. I wanted to be home. And I was up fronting a snowflake. It wasn't even a real snowstorm. And her and I had it out afterwards because I thought she was treating me like a busybody. She wasn't managing to me or my strengths. But maybe you feel differently. Maybe you think that was her prerogative as my manager, that if she needed to be fronting a snowflake, I needed to be fronting a snowflake.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think you grabbed onto something and tried to make it your own. You're like, she wasn't managing to my strengths. And I'm like, well, what's your strength here? Is that you had
my
something
person? She wasn't managing my personhood.
Yes, exactly.
My manhood.
Because I'm like, the strength is that you had something in the can so you could get out on Christmas Eve and go home. Well, I think that this would have been, I think there's a host of issues going on here, right? I mean, there's drinking before you go to work.
We're not. Yeah, that was like a mimosa.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, you've never had one mimosa, so let's not lie to our audience. Number one, but number two, I mean, there's clearly some boundary issues here, and my guess is that if there had not been those boundary issues, and there was a clear kind of compartmentalization between these are the expectations as a friend, and these are an expectations of a boss and an employee,
right?
And again, going back to that contracting, it probably would have been a lot clearer. I think that would have been a time where, again, you were digging in, I'm right. She's like, I'm right. That would have been nice to maybe have a compassionate reset meeting, right?
Yeah, those are tough for me.
I am sure, but you were wanting compassion from her, right? You had planned accordingly. It is Christmas Eve, and then it would be, okay, let's look at the data. What is the likelihood that this could be a storm? It would be important to report. I think also it's maybe establishing something like, a potential handover. It might be also talking about kind of red, yellow, green, like maybe having some kind of signals like we're in the red zone, we're in the yellow zone, we're in the green zone, right?
You're
And
literally saying that to each other.
I mean, this is contracting. And so this is your friends, right? And so you're trying to say, we are right now in the green zone. Things are operating well. I'm meeting expectations at work. We're together as friends. Yellow, we need to have a conversation. We're in the red zone. And you were in the red zone. And then how do we operate when we're in that space? We take a breather. We have a reset meeting. We talk about objectives. We're able to have, 5 minutes uninterrupted to kind of discuss. What are the boundaries and the rules around that to where you could have addressed that? But you were making so many assumptions and you had done so much planning that you were in fight or flight when that actual plan got disrupted. My guess is that she's like, I have to deliver, and this is the person who's on deck.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely where she had. She promised she had just had a history of giving me busy work. I could have a lead story that would be exclusive and all that. And if I was sitting at my desk, she would find something for me to do. And that makes me nuts.
Yeah, well, and I think that's what was happening is you never had a discussion around that, right?
We did finally have a discussion.
And what you've defined as busy work, it would be interesting to see, does she define the same? It was also interesting because management is so complex, right? She might have learned management by being assigned busy work by her manager. And that's what she saw as the model of how you kind of, have productive employees. And so we're not having those conversations. And I think that, yeah, and you should have. And we're really, what happens in organizations is we're rarely proactive. We rarely, things are good until they're not. We're not kind of anticipating when we're both in the blue zone. We're both open and aware. Our prefrontal cortex is working. We're rational people. We're not having conversations then. We're having conversations when we're like, damn it, it's Christmas Eve and there's one snowflake and I got to get the hell out of here.
So relating this back to when I put the roly-poly picture of you on, how come we didn't discuss red zone, yellow zone, green zone? You just pretty much went red on me.
Because, Justin, we met when we were 18. I was emotional. I was not mature. And we're too far gone. I mean, we had a very impulsive, ridiculous... I mean, how many times...
Thank you for not saying unhealthy.
Well, I mean, how many times would I literally be like, pull the car over, I'm getting out, I'm walking home.
We are in the yellow zone.
Johnson, we were in the red a lot too, but it was a good time. But so I think we're too far gone. I didn't know my head from my ass when I was 18, much less, all
Do you
through
think
college.
you're a good manager now? I mean, you're not really managing anybody right now, are you?
I'm not managing. So I will tell you this, if I had
Did
to
you
be
like
very,
managing also?
I did. I love managing staff. I love thinking about their growth. I love giving them opportunities. I love learning from them. I love seeing them step into leadership. And I do believe this, and I know I have some of my former employees that listen to this. I think that they would say as a good manager. Where I am not a good manager is I don't think I'm great at managing up or managing.
What does that mean?
So, if you're the vice president, managing up to the president, or sometimes not good managing laterally. So if I'm a vice president, managing to another vice president. So I'm really good about giving people the benefit of the doubt who report up to me. But when I'm sitting on a C-suite, if someone I find to be lazy, unethical, selfish, if they hit my value system, I'm not great about managing up and keeping some things to myself. I think
I could just see it.
Yeah, 100%. I think now stepping out of management and coaching so many leaders, I have become really self-aware of that. And I think if I were to kind of go back into manage, I think I would be really good at, and I'm great with peers. It's just the peers that I find to be unethical and lazy. I'm not great with. And I think I would be good at managing up even if I had an issue with that person. I think sometimes I'm just not a kiss ass, and I think sometimes I would be a right fighter, and I tried to die on too many hills. I think moving forward, I probably wouldn't.
Have you ever cried in a meeting because
Yes.
you felt so strong? Have you?
Yeah.
Really? That's surprising. Do you think that's a good thing? I can just see it. This is how it would go. It'd be like, I need to say something. I feel so strongly about this. I'm going to cry right now.
Well,
And
I
then you
probably
would
didn't say
say
I'm going to
whatever you-
cry right now. And I wouldn't say like I was sob boo-hoo. But, this is why a lot of times I do like values card sorts and really talk to people about their values, because when somebody is triggering or poking your values, it is to the core of who you are. And
Yes, like when you're ordering wine and they try not to tell you.
100%. But I am very much, and I think this is thanks to my parents and my Jesuit education. And I do think, and I hope I have a strong moral compass. I do think that we are here for people other than ourselves. And when I see that kind of selfish, greedy, opportunistic behavior, it really triggers me. And particularly because I work in higher ed. And so I think it is very important that we think about what our mission is and what we're doing. What our objective is here and how important that is. And when I see people get caught up, it really triggers me. And when it hits a real value system, sometimes I get so worked up, I haven't been able to hold back the tears. I would say probably only maybe once or twice in like a large meeting. That tended to happen maybe one-on-one with people that I was really comfortable with, that I knew it was a safe space, that I wasn't so steeled up against it.
Yeah, interesting. All right, well, let's dumb this down a lot. And on the other side of the break, we're going to take up Timothy Chalamet. Chalamet and his controversial remarks over the Oscars this last week and the battle between him, the actor community, and ballet and opera. We'll be right back on the other side. Thanks for streaming Wrong Way Forward, the weekly reminder that advice is usually free for a reason. We call out bad advice wherever it hides: boardrooms, break rooms, and even book clubs.
Enjoying this dumpster fire? Like, subscribe, and check back every Thursday for new episodes. Want us to roast your favorite piece of nonsense? Email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to include your contact info. We're not psychic, just judgmental. And now, back to Wrong Way Forward.
Roasting the worst advice ever. Welcome back to the Katie and Justin.
And the Oscar goes to Michael B. Jordan.
All right, everybody, that was this past Sunday with the Oscars when Michael B. Jordan won Best Actor for his work in Sinners. Of course, it was a major upset because Timothy Chalamet, in the weeks leading up to the Oscars, had been the frontrunner for his role in Marty Supreme. He then made very controversial remarks over the ballet and Oscar community. Katie, did you hear about these remarks?
I did, and I think it's really kind of funny. First of all, he's chit-chatting with Matthew McConaughey, and it's like an open town hall, and he makes these kind of disparaging comments like, why should we try to keep these two pillars of the art alive, opera and ballet? Nobody's really interested anymore. Oof. And it's so obnoxious and just so flippant. And and here it is, it's like, if you really even kind of understand how the arts evolved, how we got to movies. I've been watching The Gilded Age, which is amazing. And
such good TV.
It's such good TV. It takes a little while to get in. It's kind of a slow burn, but once you get in, it's really good. And to see kind of what's happening with the Met and the opera and the development, it's like, it's just so kind of entitled and in the here and now. And it's also just not being a friend of the larger arts community of which you're a member of.
100%. And to me, it represents a level of immaturity, right? I think it was last year he made a comment like, he was determined to be a serious actor and the best actor of his generation, which, I think it's acting in the end. I think that's, if there are people who have problems with the Oscars, et cetera, it's because this community takes themselves so seriously. I do think there's such a value they bring to the community in terms of escapism, et cetera. But if you take yourself too seriously in that world, it's a turnoff. And I think he started on that road last year when he said that about his nomination last year. And then to say something so stupid this year, it's just really short-sighted and just demonstrates a level of maturity. And he'll be lucky to ever win an Oscar after this comment.
And I mean, it's really kind of funny if you think about it. I mean, he's been dating Kylie Jenner. I think they're heading towards 3 years. I mean, that is I think most people agree is maybe the lowest form of entertainment, right? It's not scripted, it's barely directed. It's, it's quick and fast. It's cheap and dirty.
I didn't even think about that, but you're right. I mean,
And
literally.
yeah, and here's the thing. I saw Marty Supreme. I thought it was incredibly well acted, super interesting. To me, it was why I like to go to the movies. It was engaging and funny and interesting, and I rarely actually go sit in a movie theater. And that
Did
was
you actually
like,
see it in the theater?
I did, and I was like
Oh, wow.
with my sister in Birmingham, Alabama, at a great kind of indie film joint, and I thought this is why I love going to the movies.
Oh, I love that.
And it was, it had a real arc to the story. It had a lot of intensity. It had a lot of, big stars. I loved it. And so he did himself absolutely no favors. And what I think is hysterical is people dig in. And so now they have found, People Magazine has found a picture of Timothy Chalamet at age 6 in a ballet outfit, because he performed in the ballet Romeo and Juliet. And so, he even, again, if we could kind of talk about, how the arts have evolved, he himself evolved, right? He wasn't a movie star. He started out in ballet tights, right?
That's funny.
And
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Since I finished TV, since I go to bed at 7:30 and watch TV for 2 hours every night, I watch series over and over. So I'm starting Homeland again. Do you remember Homeland?
Oh, well, and I never finished Homeland, but I'm because I loved it, and then I moved to Singapore, and I didn't have access to, I guess, Showtime, and so I'm too lazy to figure out where I left off. But I loved it.
Oh, it's so good. So I'm on, but anyway, they introduce, the main character's daughter, has a daughter, and the daughter starts dating someone, and who is that person she's dating? It's Timothy Chalamet at age he's probably 12. So it was interesting because he becomes a relatively big character for a season, but it's funny to see him get his first break there.
The other thing that I think, and once I read this, I've never been able to see it, but they had an article about like the rise of the rat boys. Did you hear about
Oh, yeah.
this?
I did. And
There are some major actors who have rat-like features, and one of those is Timothy Chalamet. And, and I've always said this.
And the guy, I would say the guy, but the minute I said this, I can't remember the stupid movie where at the end, he swings around his unit, he's naked and dancing. He's a rat boy. Do you remember? Did you see this, Jacob?
Oh, I watched, yes, what's his name?
Saltburn. The movie was Saltburn.
Yes,
Oh,
he was
so
a total
good.
rat boy. They also say Jeremy Allen White, who was on The Bear, kind of could fall in with the rat boys. But, I always said there's only two things I'm scared of, rape and rats. And let me tell you, I can't stand rats. So now it's so funny, like Timothy Chalamet makes this comment, and I'm like, of course he does. He's a rat boy.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's a good way to wrap up this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward. Katie, give us up our handles.
Yes, we'd love to interact with you on email. That is wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. We love to hear from you, so please reach out.
Bye, everybody. All right, that's a wrap on this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward. Remember, the only thing worse than taking bad advice is giving it.
If you've liked what you've heard, like, subscribe, or follow us wherever you stream podcasts. And if you've got a topic or need some advice we'll probably regret giving, email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward.